know there's many others who can tell you that as well. And you will graduate and be in that world. And you're going to be leading the soldiers and the sailors, the airmen and the Marines in that world. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics.
Notice he said hybrid armies and little green men and breezed right along onto the next things as if he didn't miss a beat and he was trying to maintain the tempo of the rhythm of his speech. We're going to watch 1 minute of that speech leading up to that point.
Leaders who have tremendous character. And that starts with integrity and honesty and candor. And I guarantee you, your character will be tested like it has never been tested before.
I want you to listen for some key words like open-mindedness, your intellectual development, and compassion when he leads up to that mic drop moment. And the fact that he continued reciting other things rather than pausing and letting it set in. He could have dropped the mic and walked away at the point where he said hybrid armies and little green men. As soon as we're done with this, I'm going to show you some images of these little green men and talk about how this is where it all started for me with these hybrid armies. ISIS, Army of 7-footers.
You will have to have steel spines to withstand the pressures that you're going to have to endure in the years ahead. And Norwich, I believe, has prepared you to do that. But character and compassion and competence are skills that you're absolutely going to have to deal with. Part of that also is going to have to be your intellectual development. You're going to have to be open-minded and adaptive to be able to deal with the complexity of the world that involves so many different dynamic elements that it's hard to describe in sentences. If the world of 1916 was complex, or the world of 1945 was complex, the world of 2016 is intensely complex. And I can tell you that from personal experience, and I know there's many others who can tell you that as well. And you will graduate and be in that world, and you're going to be leading the soldiers and the sailors, the airmen and the Marines in that world. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. And you'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously. And for that, and then you're going to have to be leaders who have tremendous character. And that starts with integrity and honesty and candor. And I guarantee you, your character will be tested like it has never been tested before. And you will have to have steel spines to withstand the pressures that you're going to have to endure in the years ahead. And Norwich, I believe, has prepared you to do that. But character and compassion and competence are skills that you're absolutely going to have to deal with. Part of that also.
Just wanted to get that point where he mentioned compassion. This was a written speech. Every word was specifically implemented. Now let's look at some of those little green men. That speech was given at Norwich ROTC College. The original link of that speech will be in the description. Now look at the similarities between this guy that's supposedly a photo taken on Mars and this guy right here that we're going to zoom in on. This guy that I'm circling back here. They looked identical. This one was at the Vatican. This one's a 3-year-old photo, supposedly from the surface of Mars. And we're also going to look at more recent photos from the surface of Mars, which appears to show a giant skeleton. A skull with 2 eye sockets, shoulder, arm, spine, legs. This is from an MB3 video. All the original links will be in the description. So this is from a few years back where I did a screenshot slideshow. The original footage is from a KJ's What Happened at 2 hours, 34 minutes in. What we're looking at here is the guy in the red robe right here. And we'll take some screenshots and zoom in, but you notice the big bug eyes look exactly like the one you saw in uniform holding a weapon on the surface of Mars, yet this one is walking in a procession in the Vatican with the other holy rollers. I assume you can see the similarities. You zoom in too far, it gets a little distorted. Plus, going camera to camera here, I'm losing a little bit of clarity. The original video's in the description. Same dude. Little green man. You see, my whole trip for the last couple years started out with a heartfelt, tear-drenched prayer to Jesus Christ after I saw video of these hybrid armies marching those Coptic Christians to their death on the beaches of Egypt. And ever since, Little Green Man seems to have played a part in my experience. So to hear the general say, hybrid armies and Little Green Man, kind of rings a bell and resonates, and it seems like that speech that was given 5 years ago was part of the preparatory conditioning leading up to this moment now when we're in full swing disclosure. And this, if he's wearing a rubber mask, everyone else in the room is in on it because they're all acting like they don't even notice anything different about him. I'm going to show you the original footage from KJ's What Happened and then go to the footage from Mars.
4 or 5, okay. Behind the fifth guy with the goofy white hat, with the Nephilim hat. Look at the red
right back
robe.
here.
There's somebody in a red robe or something in a red robe, but we're trying to figure out what is that. You see what I'm seeing now? You see it's kind of poking around behind that. There you go. What is that? You see? In the red robe, walking really slow. What was that? Is it just something wrong with the camera, you think? Or?
This is at 2 hours, 24 minutes into this KJ's What Happened from a long time ago. I'll include that link in the description.
Okay. Nephilim long head hats. Dagon, fish god worship. Okay, all these guys are walking by. We got the red robe. No Pope hat or goofy hat on the thing in the red robe, it looks, because as it moves, see, there's someone behind it. So it's not wearing a hat. It's the only one not wearing a hat. And it's just, what is it? It looks, you know. Are we seeing one of them being exposed for just a few moments? And again, I'm not a fan of the reptilian thing, but, you know, terror. You're seeing one of these things, like, all the same, and just different mythologies, right? We can get into that another time, but still. Is that what we're seeing? Is it just a weird camera artifact thing, or is this one of those moments where maybe this just shows up on camera? We've seen a lot of that stuff happen too, right? Where this stuff can only be seen on camera, not in real life.
Watch the original. There's much better resolution. I'm losing some clarity here filming camera to camera.
One more time.
One more time. And then we're going to look at the one on Mars that looks exactly the same.
Red robe.
Same eyes,
Is it,
same face.
Is that what it is? Look at that. Is that, let's stop there.
Same being.
I mean, it looks green. It looks like a big green head with big black eyes. Or is it just someone wearing some weird thing on top of their head, or I don't know.
Well, then everyone else in the room would have to be in on the act, pretending they don't notice.
Yeah, it looks like it might just be a weird head covering.
So he's trying to give you explanations that fit between the bookends.
The same color as
Maybe it's a
everybody else
camera
is
anomaly. Maybe it's a glitch in the lighting. Maybe it's lens flares and pixels. Maybe he's wearing a rubber mask.
But there's that color.
He's
What is
grasping for threads to explain what he is seeing because it doesn't fit into his worldview. And that's what the general meant
I'm not sure
when he
what
said
it
your
is,
character
man.
will be
It's weird.
tested.
Thank you. I can't remember the subscribe that to me.
This screenshot happens to be where the guy behind him is perfectly in line with him, so it looks like he's wearing that hat, but as they walk, you can see him move side to side, and this little green guy is not wearing this hat. He's not wearing a hat. So I've paused it right here, so you can get a little better shot, and remember that face. And tell me it don't look exactly the same as that one. So now when I put out this video called Holy Reptoid showing that the same image of the same being seen at the Vatican is in this photo that's supposedly from Mars, people wanted to address whether or not I believe there's photos from Mars or I believe NASA. They want to address the one that's millions of miles away rather than the one that's in the Vatican. But you can see such a similarity between the two that we have to assume there is a relationship here. There is a correlation between these two. And whether or not you believe in a flat earth or NASA's lying, when they put this out to the general public and the general public believes NASA and all the authority that comes with their word, what you believe about flat earth really doesn't make a difference when it comes to the public's reaction. And that's what we're looking forward to here is the public reaction. That's what they're trying to manage.
One of the reasons I am bringing this out to your attention is that I have severe questions in regard to Elon Musk's alleged plan to colonize a planet that has at least 5 other bases that are not from Earth. Unfortunately, is on Mars. Yes, that is non-human species. That was
They're just showing an eclipse that happened in Palos Verdes, California that no one can explain. There we go.
That I sent, which is one of the bases on Mars.
Wait a second. You're saying this guy, this picture was taken on Mars? The one with the guy holding like a weird canister gun type thing?
Yep.
Compare it to the one in the Vatican.
NASA plates.
And then tell me how you don't believe in NASA and flat Earth.
Also confirmed with Billy Carson and the Anomaly Hunters. But the best confirmation I can give you is one of the last pictures I attached, which are the coordinates to several facilities on Mars.
So I'm going to leave that link in the description, just in case you forgot already. Same dude? Yeah, same dude. Yeah, I'd say it's the same dude. Yep, looks the same to me. Yep, same. So this is going from an intellectual exercise, and what I believe and what I think doesn't matter. Reality is where the rubber meets the road, and all of our pet theories are going to have to be relinquished. Unless you keep telling yourself things like lens flares and pixels and an artifact of the camera, and I don't believe in NASA, and you believe they have photos from Mars? Psh, I'm not that stupid. I know about Project Bluebeam. And there is the skeleton that Mr. MB3 recently showed in a video. that is from this Mars probe that we've sent up there most recently. And it does appear to be a human skeleton. It's pretty much undeniable. It's just a matter of how big that skeleton is and where that photo was actually taken.
But character and compassion and competence are skills that you're absolutely going to have to deal with. Part of that also is going to have to be your intellectual development. You're going to have to be open-minded and adaptive to be able to deal with the complexity of the world that involves so many different dynamic elements that it's hard to describe in sentences. If the world of 1916 was complex, or the world of 1945 was complex, the world of 2016 is intensely complex. And I can tell you that from personal experience, and I know there's many others who can tell you that as well. And you will graduate and be in that world, and you're going to be leading the soldiers and the sailors, the airmen and the Marines in that world. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes.
So when I said that these churches who hand you a pre-packaged cosmology, like taking a TV dinner and throwing it in the microwave instead of cooking your own food, and I compared them to pimps who charge a finder's fee for God, and their followers like a John who pays the finder's fee for God. A John is someone who buys sex from a prostitute. I wasn't necessarily referencing the tithing that you might pay to them as a donation. You paid attention. You spent time focusing on these things. You bought into it with something far more valuable than money. The focus of your attention and your beliefs. And in that way, it's kind of like a prearranged marriage. You know, like over in some of these Middle Eastern countries, they marry off their kids. Oh, your 6-year-old daughter, she can marry my 9-year-old son here in about 10 years. Or however long it is. A prearranged marriage is kind of like a baptism at 8 years old. You didn't even buy into this. Like communism, where you don't choose which job you're going to take and for how much and what you're going to do. They tell you, this is what you're going to do, this is how it's going to go, this is what you're going to get, and it was all laid out for you in advance, like a prearranged marriage. And so getting divorced is what a lot of people are going to have to face as the option when it comes to abandoning and relinquishing those preconceived ideas that weren't even your own, that were given to you. And when you can see things like the Santa psyop, the pedophile priests, the other doublethink, Jesus was God's only begotten son, but we're all God's children. No one can be perfect like Jesus, but he said we all will do everything he did and even more so. When you start to think for yourself, and you can see big glaring holes in this paradigm that you were given, and those holes are growing bigger and the thin spots are wearing thinner, soon it's going to collapse. Like a potter's wheel who's making a vase on a potter's wheel. When there's holes and thin spots, it collapses back down into a blob. And we're all going through that process of metamorphosis. Like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. But for some people it's going to be a lot harder than others, because they have so much more to let go of. All of those preconceived ideas weren't even your own. They were feelings that you were conditioned with. So you're not even thinking. Those feelings override the thought processes in order that when you come in contact with this situation, you already know how you're supposed to feel and you don't even have to think. You just fall back on your training that was drilled into you through propaganda and indoctrination. Letting go of that is how individuals find God, not groups. And each one of us, this is a very individual experience. You're not going to be there with your family and your friends or your church members. This is a decision and a process that each person has to make on their own. And it's even harder for those who've attached to a group that they call their church. It's a lot harder. Not letting go of the doctrine and the dogma, letting go of the relationships with these people whose common bond and tie that binds with you is that doctrine and dogma. It's not the bullshit in that book that's hard to let go of. It's the relationship with those people. And if I let go of the bullshit in that book, I have to let go of the people's relationship who I have a relationship with them. The tie that binds is the common beliefs, principles, priorities. And if I say that book is no longer my programming, I'm no longer letting it make me feel certain ways like I'm guilty and shameful because I don't say, yeah, he died because of me. Then these people who I have a relationship with anymore won't want to have a relationship with me. And they do and will say, I have the Antichrist spirit. Leave everything else I've said alone. Just the parable of the beam and the mote and the Santa psyop alone is enough that if you said to your pastor, your preacher, your whoever, hey, you know, I think this guy might be onto something when he says that the whole Christmas ritual is actually undermining our efforts and contrary to our goal and actually hardening people's hearts towards Christ by celebrating this false Christ figure and then telling them it was all bullshit. Maybe we should stop that. What do you think? They'll say, where'd you get that idea? That guy's filled with the Antichrist spirit. And then you'll have to think for yourself. Antichrist, that's a loaded word. How about truth? Who's more in alignment with truth? This guy who's saying they are the Antichrist or them who's saying I am the Antichrist? And you're going to have to make that decision for yourself. And going with truth and thinking for yourself when you can see how full of shit they are, how many lies they've perpetuated, how contradictory they are, how much doublethink. When you can see it for yourself, you start to think for yourself. And each one of these things that you see for yourself, if you ignore it, you're going to have to the same extent, stop thinking for yourself in all areas. Kind of a different subject. That's why they go so ridiculous and absurd and bizarre, because if you'll still believe something that ridiculous, absurd, and bizarre, there's nothing you won't believe. So that's why on things like 9/11, they got to do shit, make you believe the official story, and show you how glaringly obvious it is that it's bullshit. And if you'll still go along with it, mind control is complete. That's why they make the absurdities so absurd. Because to each degree that they make it even more absurd, that's another degree of mind control they have over the people that still bought into it. Look around us, folks. The absurdity is off the charts for a reason. And those people that are still buying into it are going so deep into mind control, there's no way out for them. On that subject, I had a run-in with a masked tard in Montana, and I mentioned it, but I'll explain it a little more, because what I see is happening is they traded their freedom and liberty for security, and they shall have and deserve neither. Because they said, okay, I'll do whatever you say, butt plug, vax, mask, anything, whatever you say, but as long as I get to go tell him to do it and he has to do what I say, I'm all in. You give me a little taste of that power and I'll give up all my freedoms and liberty to be able to go wield that power on someone else. So they gave up all their freedoms and liberty, free will, sovereignty, individuality for the security and safety of being within the collective. A member with a good standing status within that group. I'm a masker. I'm not anti-science. And so this girl in Montana, where they have just, the governor has repealed all the mandates. She runs up to me at about 5 in the morning before I had my coffee, and there's only like 2 other employees and 1 other customer in the store, and that's the only reason she did it then, because she ain't going to do what she did when there's 5 other people walking around with no mask, but the little spiritual parasite on her back saw an opportunity in my energy field. I wasn't quite up to speed yet. I was the only one in the store. She's like, ooh, like a hyena, singled one out from the pack. Sink my teeth into him. And I told her, I don't want to get into the details of what I told her. What was happening is that that credit card, that power and authority that she was given in exchange for her free will and individuality and sovereignty is no longer valid. She tries to wield the power and authority of this credit card that she's got, and no one's listening. They're not complying. I did everything you told me to, and now they're not doing what I tell them to. And now she's got nothing. And so at 5:30 a.m. when there's just one guy in the store, I'll try and wield my power again. And I let her know, you have to continue believing in this because you bought into it already. And it's about your self-image and worldview. It's your self-esteem you're trying to prop up. And we got into a little back and forth. She's like, I can see that you're stupid. It was bizarre. But because they've already invested in it so heavily, and I was telling her, this is a failed investment. You're doubling down on a failed strategy for success. This is a bad investment that you've made. Cut your losses. And I can see all the deep psychology that goes into it. It's because I'm a white male. She's been emotionally mind controlled. It's not that she's thinking this, it's she's feeling this. And when you pointed out to her that even equal protection under the law and equal application of the law, otherwise what you're doing is discrimination. So when you single out one person to enforce this rule on, meanwhile the rest of the day people are coming and going all day, but you decide to single this one out, that's called discrimination. But I wasn't going to get into it with her. She probably lost her job over the whole thing. So as far as this worldview and this cosmology that so many people have bought into, just like they believed in COVID, nobody fucking believed in COVID. They had that shit rammed down their throat, just like Christianity rammed down your throat from the time you were a child using these theatrics like Santa psyop. And so getting that divorce from that prearranged marriage that your parents put you into because their parents put them into it, because their parents put them into it, and none of them thought for themselves, maybe I could meet God on my own and I don't need all these people. Abandoning that whole system of prearranged marriages, giving you your prepackaged cosmology, baptizing you at 8 years old when you have no clue what the hell any of that means. They're not trying to open your world up. They're trying to lock you in when they baptize you at 8 years old. That's the contract. That's the wedding vows that you didn't voluntarily take. That applies to 90% of Christians out there. They were Christian before they even knew what a Christian was. Because their parents told them, yeah, you're Christian. Oh, really? So once we've invested in something, we continue investing in it, like that old beater car in the garage. Now it's the alternator that broke, but I've already fixed the transmission and the driveline and then this and the that and the other thing and the other thing and the other thing, and I should have sold it a long time ago, but I've buried all this money into it. I guess I'll just go pay another $100 to fix the alternator because I fixed all these other things. I don't want to lose my seed investment money that I've put into this old beater that still won't drive. So I'm going to put a little more into it so I don't lose all that other. Time to cut your losses. That's what people do. They continue investing in something that they've already invested in, even when it's a failed investment. Whether it's a prearranged marriage, a prescribed cosmology, a pandemic that you got suckered into. Allowing yourself to let go of those things and get a divorce. And think that I can go out there in the world all by myself. Like a woman that doesn't know what she's going to do because she's spent her whole life married to this guy and I don't know what I do out there single. I don't know if I can make it. I don't know what the hell I do with myself. A person who's always been in this religion. I don't know what I'd be able to do, especially in these times when it appears the reality is about to hit the road and the rubber is about to matter and it's not all just an intellectual exercise. I haven't been thinking for myself in religious, spiritual context my whole life. Now's not a good time to start because we're in sudden death, final instant overtime. Last round. So for a lot of people, it's too late. They're locked in and they're not going to have the courage to get a divorce. They're going to stay in that miserable marriage, even though it was given to them. They're going to wear that mask, even though they know damn well they don't believe any of it. They pretended to believe in it so they could fit in with the group from COVID to Christianity. And now, it's time to get your vaccine. You still believe in it? Now it's time to meet your maker. You still gonna pretend to believe in it? Or are you gonna humble yourself and say, I don't know what I got suckered into? But all the people who suckered me into it were suckered into it as well. But for the grace of God, there go I, just as unable to think for myself and direct and guide myself, and as much of a remote-controlled biobot transceiver as the rest of those. But if you do have the ability to think for yourself, and you do have enough self-esteem that you feel good enough about yourself that you can make it out there in the world on your own, that you can face God face to face, because you ain't going there with your church and your pastor all as character references. You're going there alone. And when you get there, you might have wanted to think about some things by yourself outside of the context of the doctrine and the dogma. Be real honest, like you're talking to a regular person, without the facade and the thou and the thus and the thine and amen. Just be real honest and go inward. And whatever it is that's listening that knows you're here and that watches over you will respond. And this world is interactive. It responds to you. It's like we're in a living matrix, if you will. But the God that responds to you is obviously not of this world, because he has so many controls and levers over this world that he could not possibly be in it and subject to those laws of physics and whatever else we think this world is. And only through that personal experience will you be able to develop a relationship that grows into a knowing. Knowing is just thinking and believing with a feeling of certainty that goes with it that's so strong you say, I know this thing. The only way you'll be able to know that this God is benevolent and is pursuing the plan of the greatest amount of happiness for the most amount of people and cares about you personally is to have that interactive relationship. When you see the things in this world that he can do, she, whoever they are. Takes a couple years to develop a relationship to the point where you can take direct orders without feeling like you're being bossed around, like some demonic possession whisper in your ear telling you better go do this. Takes a couple of years of constant listening for that still small voice within before that still small voice grows a little louder, because it's not going to violate your free will. And unless you showed for 2 years with your consistent actions that speak louder than words, that say, I want to hear this voice more, I want to do your will, only then does that voice get a little louder and give you more direct statements. Because prior to that, prior to the relationship development over the course of a couple of years, those direct statements would have seemed like orders. Now, after you've been asking for it for a couple of years, you'll be able to receive it differently than some sort of violation of your free will from the unknown. Because it becomes the known entity that you have this relationship with. And so many people had good intentions. But they can't separate that and accept that they've been fooled. They want to continue believing in the authorities and the smock, the white smock with the clipboard. They don't want to accept science is all bullshit. An organized institution to mislead you, to ensnare and envelop your mind and get you to pay the most valuable currency there is, your attention, and spend your time and buy into the spinning ball in the middle of nowhere cosmology. It's no different than a religion, but it's just as hard, whether it's the religion or the science, for someone who's fully invested in it to accept that they got fooled. And those credentials ain't worth shit. Yeah. Mind you, neither the scientific community nor the spiritual or religious community is telling you about the plasma fires. They're all keeping it secret from you. If either one of them truly believed in their position, they would address the subject. If they trusted in their science, or they trusted in their religion, or they truly believed in their God. Instead, they try to manipulate your perception of science and of religion and of spirituality and of the state of this world right now by keeping that truth from you? How can you continue to follow a group that keeps you in the dark about such things once you've discovered the truths that they held from you? The beam in the moat. The Santa psyop.